Hey guys, how's it going? It's Janie over here at JaniesSweets. Welcome back to my channel. In this episode, I am going to show you how I cover my cake dummies with fondant or sugar paste, whatever you want to call it, and get super nice, flawless finishes. I'm going to teach you two different methods that you can use. You could also use the same methods with real cakes, so if you want to learn everything I have to say about this, then keep on watching. So whatever brand of fondant that you do end up using, just make sure that the fondant is super nice and pliable. You're going to want to knead this fondant really nicely. It needs to be very smooth and just really flawless. The only reason why I'm saying that is dummy cakes are actually a bit harder to cover than real cakes are, because two reasons. One, they don't have much weight on them, so they kind of tend to flop around and you have to work harder to keep them stabilized. But also they have razor sharp edges, whereas a real cake doesn't. It's a little bit more smooth. So what you want to make sure that you do is your fondant is kneaded properly so that it engages the elasticity of it. I don't know, it's a little bit more forgiving and stretchy so it won't rip, and also you don't roll it out too thin. So I tend to roll it a little bit thicker than I would for a regular cake. Now I've covered my cake in some vegetable shortening. You could use Trex, whatever it is that you have, and I'm going to just lift it off and then cover the entire thing. I'm sorry, that was my phone. Just cover the entire thing. Now this is a draping method. I like to use this method when I am working on a larger cake, because that way it tends to not rip as fast. But if I was working on a tall, skinny cake, I wouldn't use that method. I would use the next method that I'm going to show you. So draping it right over the cake, just make sure that it adheres to it. Anywhere that did not have any vegetable shortening is not going to stick, and that's where it's going to tear and pull and, create just horrible rips. So make sure that your cake is nice and covered in vegetable shortening so that you don't run out of into this issue. Now I'm just using my fondant smoothers to smooth out the corners. It's a little bit easier to do this with the dummy cake because you can apply as much pressure as you want, even flip it upside down if you wanted to, and nothing will happen to the cake. So you can create sharper edges on a dummy cake much easier than with a real one. That's why I like it. Now on to the second method. Now the second method is kind of like a paneling or rolling method. All I'm doing is rolling out a super long strip of fondant. I've measured my cake around to make sure of how much fondant I'm gonna need. So this is what you see me using the tape measuring for. I knew that the cake needed to be 4 inches tall and I think maybe 28 inches long. I can't remember. Or the fondant needed to be that length. So I'm just gonna roll it out the thickness that I want and make sure that I have a straight edge. The top edge doesn't matter. Just cut out the bottom so that it's super straight. Now, using a rolling pin, you're gonna grab one end of the fondant and I'm just sprinkling it with some cornstarch so it doesn't stick to itself. You're just gonna roll it out of the way. Now my cake is covered in shortening, and I'm just gonna lift the fondant with the rolling pin and adhere it to the side. That's it, just that simple. Now where the seam meets, I'm going to cut it, and I wish I had done this on camera, but all I did is I cut a nice seam, remove the one that's at the bottom, and then join the other one. I'm really hoping it's making sense, but I did not record this. I really do apologize. So all you have to do to hide that seam is just kind of buffer it. Use your fondant smoother as, kind of like an iron to iron out that seam. It is going to show, but most likely you're gonna have the back of the cake, or if you don't have a back of the cake, you can always hide it with whatever design you're gonna put on the cake. If you are going to leave it bare and just straight out smooth white, then I wouldn't suggest you do this way. I would suggest you do the draping method. Just use a sharp knife or whatever to cut off the excess at the top, and then use your pizza cutter to cut off the excess at the bottom. Now, we are going to cover that top part as soon as we are done smoothing it out. Just make sure it's nice and flush to the cake, or to the dummy cake. And now to cover the top part, you need another piece of fondant. Just roll it out, knead it into a little ball, and then roll it out with some cornstarch on your work surface. Make sure it's the same thickness as the rest of the cake. And then it's super simple, you guys. As soon as it's done, you know, to the thickness that you want, you're just gonna grab your cake and, oh man, I'm still not doing it. I apologize, I'm still rolling, y'all, I'm still rolling. And I do apologize for the camera focusing. It's so annoying, I didn't realize it was an autofocus. Okay, so you just flip your cake upside down, and mind you, I have vegetable shortening on that top part, and I'm just gonna go around with my pizza cutter, making sure that I'm staying super close to the edge so that I can cut a clean seam. Now flip it the right side up and then start smoothing out the edges. Now again, the seam is going to show, you guys. It's not going to be perfect, but guess what? When you're looking at the big picture, you're not really going to be able to see it. Like, it won't be visible at all. Just make sure that you try to blend it in as much as possible. Now, I did spend quite some time, and believe it or not, this entire cake that you saw at the beginning or the thumbnail of the video took me over an hour. I think about an hour and 15 minutes to completely fond it. So it does take a long time if you want to be perfect. I'm pretty sure there are people who can fond a cake in much less time than I did. However, this is how long it took me because I wanted to finish with it and make sure that the edges were nice and smooth and perfect. So take your time, pinch the edges together as much as you can, but don't stress out over it. Nobody's gonna be like staring at the cake like straight on. So see that seam that was in the back of the cake? You barely can see it at this point from how much I've worked on it. So do your best, but don't stress over it. So you guys, this is how I cover my dummy cakes in fondant. This is how I've covered the past few cakes that I've made that were styrofoam on the inside. If you have not seen those videos, I will link them for you guys below. So yeah, you are going to see a lot more dummy cakes on this channel because I have a lot more, you know, bigger cakes planned. But I don't want to make, you know, a whole bunch of cakes that nobody's going to eat. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative. Anytime I cover a dummy cake, I use one of these methods that I've just shown you. So I really like them. They've always worked for me. So hopefully they work for you as well. If you have any questions, leave them down below for me. If you click on this annotation to your left, you will be directed to my last video. Also, I am on Facebook and Instagram. All of my socials are at JaniesSweets. Subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss out on any of my future videos. I love you. I'll talk to you next time.